Welcome to our deep dive today. You know how news sometimes breaks and it's like hard to grasp the full impact right away?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're doing right now, tackling those LA wildfires that are like still raging.
Yeah.
As we speak, we've got a live feed from the Hindustan Times,
Oh, wow.
which is kind of wild, right? We're
Yeah.
practically seeing things unfold in real time.
It's like having a front row seat to history, even if it's tragic.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about the flames, you know what I mean? It's about the people.
Right.
The people caught in the middle of it. 5 confirmed deaths already.
Oh, wow.
And sadly, that number is expected to climb.
And beyond that immediate tragedy, countless lives disrupted. Just imagine having to flee your home with no idea like what you'll return to. It's a level of uncertainty
Yeah.
and fear that's hard to comprehend.
The article mentions how even some big Hollywood names are being impacted.
Oh, really?
Billy Crystal, for instance, had to evacuate
Oh,
his home, the one he's lived in for 45 years. Just think about the memories,
right.
tied to a place like that, just gone.
It really underscores how these fires don't discriminate,
Yeah.
Whether you're a household name or someone just trying to get by, the threat is the same.
And it's not just homes, right?
Right.
The scope of this is massive. Entire blocks leveled, businesses reduced to rubble. The article describes grocery stores,
Wow.
banks, even landmarks like the Topanga Ranch Motel and Will Rogers Ranch House just wiped out.
Wow. One of these fires is already being called the most destructive in LA history,
Oh, really?
surpassing even the damage from the 2008 Sarah fire.
That's unbelievable.
It's a stark reminder of how vulnerable we are to the power of nature.
Reading through the live updates, you really get a sense of the chaos. The article mentions how firefighters are having a terrible time because of those Santa Ana winds. You're familiar with those, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They're these powerful, dry gusts that are notorious for fanning the flames.
Yeah.
It's making aerial firefighting almost impossible at times.
And the speed at which these fires move is terrifying.
Yeah.
There's this quote from Battalion Chief Brent Pasqua that really stuck with me. He says that these fires move so quickly, it doesn't give you time to think of what to pack. It doesn't give you time to think of how you're going to get out.
That's chilling.
Yeah.
You just grab what you can and run.
Right.
Makes you wonder if any amount of preparation can truly feel sufficient when faced with something like that. What's concerning is that LA County Fire Chief himself admitted they weren't prepared for a disaster of this scale.
That raises a whole host of questions about disaster preparedness,
Yeah.
especially in a world where these types of extreme weather events are becoming more frequent. But, beyond the immediate danger and response, there's the long-term fallout to consider.
Right.
One of the biggest is economic.
The article throws out a number that's pretty hard to wrap your head around. The estimated cost of this disaster is somewhere between $52 and $57 billion.
Wow.
If that holds true, it would make this the most expensive wildfire ever recorded.
To put that into perspective, think about Hurricane Katrina. That disaster, while devastating, resulted in damages estimated at around $200 billion. So while this wildfire's financial impact is immense, it shows how the economic blow from natural disasters can vary tremendously depending on the type of event.
$57 billion.
Yeah.
It's hard to even grasp what that means in practical terms. But it's not just buildings, right? It's businesses shutting down.
Of course.
People unable to work. The strain on the entire system.
Absolutely. The article highlights the massive power outages caused by the fires.
Yeah.
And preventative shutdowns by the power company. Over 1.5 million people affected.
Wow.
And you can imagine the ripple effect. Transportation halts, communication breaks down, businesses can't operate.
The FAA even had to issue a flight ban near the fires. And we talked about Hollywood earlier. Imagine the disruption to movie productions, events. Even Universal Studios had to close its doors.
Oh, wow.
It's this chain reaction that goes far beyond the immediate area of the flames.
It really shows how interconnected our world is, and how one event, as devastating as it is, can trigger disruptions that ripple through so many aspects of life. But amidst all of this chaos and devastation, the article does highlight some glimmers of hope.
Oh, good.
It seems like people are stepping up to help in whatever way they can.
Right. The article talks about World Central Kitchen. They're on the ground already providing meals to those who've been displaced or are fighting the fires.
That's wonderful.
And get this, Elon Musk is offering free Starlink terminals to help people stay connected in areas without cell service. It's amazing to see people finding ways to make a difference,
Yeah.
even with technology.
And it's not just individuals. President Biden has pledged federal support, which includes sending in the National Guard to assist with the recovery efforts.
Oh, wow.
This level of response highlights the seriousness of the situation and the need for a coordinated effort to help those affected.
It definitely shows a sense of hopefully things getting under control and that help is on the way. But even with all that, we can't ignore the bigger questions that this disaster raises.
Exactly. The article mentions the role of climate change and those Santa Ana wines in fueling these fires. And that's a conversation we need to have. Are these just freak occurrences? Or are we seeing a pattern
Right.
that demands we rethink how we live and prepare for the future?
That's a perfect segue to the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We need to understand what led to this, what role we might play in it, and what we can do to prevent these kinds of tragedies from happening again, or at least lessen the impact.
Because one thing's clear, these fires are a wake-up call, a reminder of the power of nature and the need to find ways to coexist with it more sustainably. So we've seen the devastation, the immediate impact, but to really understand what's happening, we need to take a step back
Yeah.
and look at the root causes. What's the article telling us about? What led to this?
Well, it points to a few key factors. Some of them we've already touched on. Those Santa Ana winds, for instance, they're a huge part of the equation. They're these powerful, dry winds that whip through Southern California, especially in the fall.
Right.
They just dry everything out, creating prime conditions for these fires to spread so rapidly.
It's almost like nature setting the stage for disaster, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
You've got these dry conditions.
Right.
And then these winds come along and act like a giant bellows, just pushing the flames along.
Exactly. And then you add climate change into the mix.
Right.
Which is causing warmer temperatures.
Yeah.
And even drier conditions overall. And you've got a recipe for what they're calling mega fires.
Right.
These aren't your typical wildfires, you know.
Right.
They're burning hotter, faster, and over larger areas than we've seen before.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It's not just that there are fires, it's the scale and intensity that are changing.
Right.
The article has a whole section
Oh, okay.
devoted to this very question.
Yeah.
Why are there massive wildfires in California? And what's the solution?
Okay, so what's their take? Are these just natural cycles or is something bigger at play?
Well, they definitely emphasize that climate change is playing a significant role.
Mm-hmm.
Drier conditions mean more fuel for the fires.
Yeah.
Warmer temperatures create that perfect environment for them to ignite and spread like wildfire. No pun intended.
It's almost like a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Climate change fuels more wildfires, and then those wildfires release even more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere,
Exactly.
further accelerating climate change. It's a bit daunting to think about.
It is a feedback loop that we need to break, and quickly.
Yeah.
But the article also points to other factors
Okay.
contributing to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
One that's particularly relevant here in California
Yeah.
is human development encroaching into wildland areas.
That makes sense. The more we build homes and infrastructure in fire-prone areas, the greater the risk of ignition.
Exactly.
The more lives and property are at stake.
Precisely. And then there's the issue of forest management. For decades, the focus has been on fire suppression,
Right.
putting out fires as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But that has actually led to an overgrowth of vegetation in many forests,
Right.
creating even more fuel for wildfires when they do occur.
So it's not just one thing. It's a complex interplay of natural factors, human activity, and even past policies that have created this perfect storm for these mega fires. But knowing all this, what about solutions? Does the article offer any hope?
It does touch on a few potential solutions.
Okay.
One that's often discussed is better land management practices.
Okay.
This includes things like controlled burns,
Okay.
which are intentionally set fires
Right.
that help reduce fuel loads and thinning out overgrown vegetation.
That sounds like a good starting point. But I've also heard controlled burns can be controversial.
Right.
Aren't there risks involved with intentionally setting fires?
Yeah,
Couldn't they get out of control?
that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for careful planning
Yeah.
and execution when it comes to controlled burns.
Right.
The article actually mentions that some experts believe we need to increase the pace and scale of controlled burns
Yeah.
to effectively manage the risk of megafires.
Wow.
But it's a complex issue with no easy answers. There are also environmental concerns to consider as well.
Right. It's all about finding that balance between reducing fuel loads
Yes.
and protecting ecosystems. So what other solutions does the article mention?
Another key area is investing in fire-resistant building materials and landscaping. Creating defensible spaces around homes,
Mm.
and communities can help limit the spread of wildfires
Okay.
and protect lives and property.
So basically, we need to be smarter about how and where we build,
Yes.
taking into account the increasing risk of wildfires.
Yeah.
But it sounds like these solutions are really focused on adapting to the problem.
Right.
What about addressing the root cause, climate change?
You're right. Adaptation is crucial, but we can't ignore the underlying issue.
Yeah.
The article stresses the importance of tackling climate change on a global scale. If we want to truly curb the trend of megafires,
That feels almost overwhelming. I mean, what can we as individuals do to tackle such a massive problem?
it's easy to feel powerless in the face of such a huge issue,
Yeah.
but every little bit helps. Supporting policies that promote renewable energy, reducing our own carbon footprints, even just raising awareness about the issue
Yeah.
can contribute to the solution. It's about changing behaviors and mindsets on a collective level.
I like how you put that, changing behaviors and mindsets, because it really is a collective effort, right?
It is.
We need to act on both the local and global levels to mitigate the risk of these devastating wildfires.
Absolutely. And the article makes a powerful point. It says this disaster underscores the vulnerability of even seemingly untouchable places,
Yeah.
like Hollywood, to the forces of nature. It's a wake-up call for all of us, no matter where we live.
It's a reminder that we're all connected to nature,
We are.
whether we live in a bustling city or a remote wilderness area. And as we rebuild from these fires, we need to ask ourselves some tough questions about how we can better protect ourselves and our communities from future events like this. But I also think it's important to acknowledge the resilience of the human spirit. I mean, we're seeing it play out in real time with this live feed.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
The article highlights so many stories of people helping each other,
right.
offering support and finding ways to rebuild their lives. It's a testament to our ability to adapt and overcome, even in the face of immense challenges.
And that leads perfectly to the next part of our dive. We've talked about the devastation, the causes, the potential solutions, but now I want to hear more about those stories of resilience, of people coming together, because I think that's just as important to understand.
I agree.
Yeah.
These stories of individual and community resilience are what give us hope for the future. They remind us that even in the darkest of times, there's always light to be found. So let's delve into those stories and see what we can learn from them.
You know, as we've been going through this live feed
Right.
from the Hindustan Times, it's really struck me how much it feels like we're right there in
Yeah.
LA experiencing this
Right.
alongside everyone else.
It's true. The immediacy of this news feed is really something.
Yeah,
It pulls you into the chaos
right.
and fear,
Yeah.
but it also gives you a glimpse of the resilience
Mm-hmm.
of the people caught in the middle of it.
It's one thing to read about wildfires in a textbook
Right.
or even see them on the evening news, but this is different. Like,
Yeah.
we're getting these firsthand accounts, these raw emotions
Right.
as the events unfold.
It really brings the human element to the forefront, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We're not talking about like abstract statistics or scientific data here.
Right.
We're talking about real people
Mm.
whose lives have been turned upside down.
Yeah.
People who've lost their homes, their
Yeah.
sense of security, their communities.
There's this one quote from the article that just stayed with me.
Oh, yeah.
It's from a resident who was watching the fire approach her home
Wow.
through her doorbell camera.
Oh.
She says, "My daughter reminded me to check my Ring camera. When I opened the app, I saw the plants on fire and my neighbor's stuff burning behind our home.
Oh, God.
The home next to me, which is under construction, looked like it was burning down."
Just imagine that feeling of helplessness,
Yeah.
watching your world go up in flames
Right.
through a tiny screen.
It's scary.
It really underscores how quickly these fires can move
Yeah.
and how little time people have to react.
Absolutely. And the article is filled with similar accounts of loss and displacement.
Yeah.
It even mentions that celebrities like Mandy Moore and Carrie Elwes lost their homes
Wow.
in the fires.
It's a stark reminder that these disasters don't discriminate.
Right?
They affect everyone, regardless of their social status or wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And that shared experience, that collective vulnerability, can be a powerful force for bringing people together.
Which is a perfect lead-in to what I was thinking about earlier.
Okay.
Because for all the devastation, the article also highlights some truly inspiring stories.
Yes.
It's the resilience and community support.
It talks about how World Central Kitchen has been on the ground from the beginning,
Yeah.
providing meals to first responders and families who've been displaced.
Right. And we talked about Elon Musk earlier,
Right.
offering those free Starlink internet terminals.
Yeah,
That's a lifeline for people who've lost everything, including their connection to the outside world.
absolutely.
And even Airbnb is getting involved, issuing refunds for bookings in the affected areas.
That's great.
It's a recognition that people's travel plans have been completely disrupted.
Right.
And it's a small but significant act of support.
It's encouraging to see this outpouring of support,
Yeah.
both from individuals and organizations.
Yeah.
It speaks to the best of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
that inherent desire to help others in need.
And it's not just private citizens stepping up.
Right.
The article mentions that President Biden has approved a major disaster declaration
Oh,
for
wow.
California,
Okay.
which will unlock federal resources to support the recovery efforts.
That's a crucial step
Yeah.
because the financial burden of rebuilding after these fires is going to be immense.
Right.
The article estimates the total economic impact could be upwards of $57 billion.
It's a staggering figure, and it's hard to even comprehend what that means in practical terms.
Yeah.
But it's not just about rebuilding homes and infrastructure,
Right.
right? It's about the long-term economic impact, the lost business revenue, the strain on public services. These are things that will continue to be felt for years to come.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that this disaster is just one example
Yeah.
of a much larger trend.
Right.
We're seeing more frequent and severe extreme weather events
Yeah.
all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And these events are putting a tremendous strain on our communities and economies.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway for me is this: we're living in a changing world,
Yeah.
a world where the threat of climate change is no longer a distant concern,
Right.
but a present reality.
And this reality demands that we adapt.
Yeah.
We need to find new ways to protect ourselves and our communities
Right.
from the growing risks of wildfires, floods, droughts, and other extreme weather events.
We need to learn from the tragedies like these LA wildfires.
We do.
We need to invest in proactive solutions like better forest management,
Right.
fire-resistant construction, and renewable energy sources. We need to take individual action,
Yeah.
but also demand larger-scale change.
And perhaps most importantly, we need to recognize that we're all in this together.
Yeah, we are.
The choices we make both individually and collectively will determine the future of our planet and the well-being of generations to come.
It's a daunting challenge, but it's also an opportunity to build a more resilient, sustainable, and just world for everyone. And I hope that this deep dive has given you some valuable insights to consider
Me too.
as we all navigate this changing world.
Because while the road ahead may be long and challenging, there's always hope.
There is.
Hope that we can learn from these experiences, come together, and create a better future for ourselves and for generations to come.